Welcome, you're watching Riks Europe. Today I am joined by Andrew Hamill, lawyer and journalist. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So we're going to talk a bit about immigration policy in Germany. Previously it's been said that they would accept immigrants from Italy. Now they want to send them back. They've also been wanting to send immigrants back to Greece. Could you tell us about this? What's happening?
Sure. So the basic problem here is the current structure of European immigration law under what's called the Dublin III arrangement. And what that says is basically once an immigrant hits European soil, first place they step on European soil, whether it's Lampedusa in Italy or in Greece, that country is responsible for judging their asylum claim. And that would mean, of course, that these countries at the EU periphery, which are pretty poor, they would be having to adjudicate hundreds of thousands of asylum claims, which they don't have the resources for. So Greece and Italy and lots of other countries basically just wave immigrants through until they get deeper into Europe. And most of them end up in Germany because Germany has the most generous asylum policies of any European country, possibly excepting Sweden. And so there are now thousands and thousands of people who should, under Dublin III, what Germany is now entitled to do is say, hey, wait, we've got this person who first hit European shores in your country, Italy, and so we want to send them back according to EU law so that you can decide whether they're entitled to asylum. And Germany made something like 15,000 requests to Italy. It's always requests. There's nothing binding here. And Italy basically rejected almost all of them. And the same thing is true with Greece or Bulgaria or Poland or other countries where immigrants first hit EU soil. The immigrants all wind up deeper inside Western Europe, almost all of them. And then they basically just stay there. Because that's where the benefits are, and Germany will not force the issue. It will eventually agree to host all these people, pay their welfare benefits, and give them all an individual trial. So this is basically just one symptom of a European immigration system that's fundamentally broken. The rules don't really even count anymore, and everybody knows it, but so far there's been no reform.
And how has this been affecting Germany with this very generous immigration policy?
Yeah, the immigration is the number one political issue in Germany now. Most people agree with that. About 3 out of every 4 Germans think that the current system is either bad or very bad. Interestingly, this is like a cross-party consensus. Even half of German Green Party members say that they are not satisfied with how immigration is working in Germany. And the one main reason is because last year in 2023, Germany got 350,000 asylum seekers. These are not Ukrainians. Ukrainians are processed a different way. They automatically get in. And these asylum seekers came from 4 main countries: Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Turkey. And currently, under German law, these asylum seekers must be distributed fairly all across the territory of Germany, which means that, small towns might be confronted with an order that they suddenly, find spaces for 50 or 20 or 200 asylum seekers, many of whom speak no German, and there's been no background checks on any of these people. And the local authorities have to end up shouldering lots of the costs, which are just enormous. And so there's all of these frictions between the federal government, which is telling all of these small towns and smaller German states, you must take these people, and the local authorities who are saying, we don't have the money, we don't have the equipment, we don't have the space, and our local population is not on board with this. They don't like this. And so it's a problem that keeps creating a great deal of friction in German society. And the forecast, because there's been no reforms at all, the forecast is that in 2024, there will be another 350,000 people. There's already been 50,000 illegal immigrants coming across the borders in Germany so far in 2024. So we're on track to hit another almost record amount.
So with the strain on the German resources, because as you said, they can't take in so many, they can't accompany them with anything. What has the living standard become for the refugees and asylum seekers in Germany?
That is extremely variable because because every one of the 16 German states basically has its own refugee policy, and they are the ones who actually carry out federal law directly. And so what you have in most areas, they are the local authorities, the local mayors and regional directors are committed to trying to find humane places for all these people. And so you've got a lot of situations in which they will rent out 3 or 4-star hotels and consign half of the rooms to asylum seekers or Ukrainian refugees, or they will sort of seize with compensation farmhouses. Or in Germany recently, they basically announced they're going to, in Dusseldorf, where I live, they announced they're going to convert a huge office building in the center of a really nice part of the city into makeshift refugee shelters. And so German states and cities have so far been just about able to prevent tent cities or, putting people in camping grounds. But actually, the city of Hamburg just announced, we have run out of space and we're going to start putting people in tent cities in our city parks because there's just no more room.
How is it affecting the locals, the German people?
There was, in 2015 and 2016, there was a huge wave of immigration, about 1.3 million people. And, Germany was praised around the world by more sort of progressive commentators for its Willkommenskultur, the welcoming culture. And there were just actually hundreds of thousands of Germans volunteered, and they took people into their homes and they donated clothing and other things to help the refugees, etc. But, that couldn't go on forever. And now you see what people sometimes call compassion fatigue. The numbers of volunteers have dried up to almost none. And the refugee agent, Germany now has the largest refugee processing agency on the planet in human history, because so many resources have had to be poured into this issue. And you have, in larger cities with more liberal populations, like where I live, Dusseldorf, then you don't really notice all that much of a change. People are going to accept it. They voted for social democratic and green politicians, and so, theoretically, they're getting what they voted for. But in more rural and conservative parts of the country, you're seeing a lot of citizen mobilization that, like Green Party politicians will try to go speak in more conservative Bavarian areas, and they'll be like shouted down, or, there'll be farmers will park tractors outside of where they're speaking. So in more conservative areas, there has been a large outcry. And of course, there's been a rise in support for the populist right party, the Alternative for Germany.
And there's been described as to be an ongoing tension between member states regarding the distribution of migrants and refugees. How can this be improved?
Well, in Germany's federal system, it's kind of hard to improve things because there's a really complicated system for what the federal government has to do, what the state government has to do. So far, what the federal government has done is basically they've just begun to pump money at the issue. So they've agreed to set up these billion-dollar special funds to help the states cope with all of these extra costs for refugee maintenance and asylum benefits, etc. But one huge problem is that the German Constitutional Court recently outlawed the use of these special funds. It said all the money that the government spends must be in one budget that Parliament approves, and the budget must be balanced. So the amount of money available to give to the local communities and states has recently gone down by 80 or 90% because politicians are scrambling to figure out where they can get more money to try to cope with these costs at the local level. And relations between local leaders and the federal government are probably at, their lowest ebb in decades, precisely because of this issue.
And the relationship between Germany and Italy due to this difficulty, how is that now?
That is, Italy has been it's played a really interesting role because, of course, you've had the participation of what are called far-right parties in Italy, and a lot of them have made the argument that what's happening is Germany is using its power at the level of the EU to maintain a really liberal immigration system in which you cannot force back anybody at the external European border. You have to let them all in. You have to give them all an individual asylum process. And so Italy has said these are things that are German human rights priorities, but we have to bear the brunt of Germany's policies because the immigrants land in Italy. Italy has had most of them, and they often land on ships that are piloted by German captains. Until recently, the German government even spent federal money to subsidize rescue ships in the Mediterranean to bring people to Italy and basically dump them on Italy and say, here's another, 300 or 400 migrants, and you have to process them. And Germany has taken a couple of thousand migrants off of Italy's and Greece's hands, in a sort of, solidarity mechanism, as they call it, but nowhere near as many as have been arriving. And so this is a constant theme between the government of Italy and Germany, and it's always there sort of bubbling under their horizon that basically we Italians are being made to suffer the consequences of an unrealistic and idealistic asylum policy that Germany has basically imposed on Europe. That may change because the EU, after literally 4 years of angry arguments and negotiations, just, agreed on a few guidelines to reform the immigration system. But so far, we still haven't seen any concrete proposals.
Thank you, Andrew Hamill, a lawyer and journalist.
You're welcome very much.
And thank you for watching Riks Europe.